Hello, I'm Richard McMillan, and I'm here to talk about George Whitefield, an entrepreneur, a preacher, a capitalist, and also Jesus' best friend. Well, George Whitefield was a late 18th century preacher from England who made several trips to the United States where he developed an open-air style of preaching. When he went back to England and tried this open-air style, at best it was lukewarm in receiving. One of the comments about him that was written up in the papers, one of the reviews said that it was derivative and ordinary, which is really contrary to the way it was received in the United States. When he comes to the United States, he will become one of the preeminent orators and preachers of the Great Awakening, up there with John Edwards and others. He is going to make these open-air assemblies where hundreds to thousands of people will arrive. In fact, Alan Heimert, the historian, claims that he had 30,000 people at one of his sermons. That's pretty big, considering Philadelphia was the second largest city at 13,000 people. I don't know. Oh well. But he was claimed to have had 3,000 people show up at a Philadelphia service, which even so, that's 1 out of every 4 people. I mean, Taylor Swift would be proud of those numbers. Well, anyway, how did he get such large crowds? Advertising. He would buy ad space in newspapers and he would write these ads, but they read more like they were articles or even reviews of his sermons. So he would comment on them, and then he would give little snippets of what he had preached on, so people would get a taste of what he was offering. And you just give them a taste and they come in for more. Marvelous marketing. He's going to also sell his sermons in pamphlet form, so people could buy his sermon and take it home and read it later on or share it with friends. He even, at his meetings, sold the Book of Common Prayer, which was a book any family would be proud to own. He was so successful, he came to the attention of Benjamin Franklin, and he and Ben Franklin are going to print his sermons for nearly 20 years. Over 110 titles of his pamphlets were printed with Ben Franklin. Now, he's making all this money. Why was he doing this for? What was the objective? He wanted to build an orphanage down in Georgia. It will be called Bethesda. He will build this orphanage on 500 acres. Now, 500 acres is an awful lot of property. So how did he afford to pay for this? Well, he was able to pay for this by having cotton. He grew cotton to fund the orphanage. And also, if you have cotton, you have slavery. George Whitefield was a slave owner. So they're going to have slavery, and when it came harvest time, the orphans picked cotton side by side with the slaves. So this is quite an enterprise he has going. But from the profits, he paid for the expenses of the orphanage, but he also paid for a school for Negroes, a school for free black children up in Virginia. Interesting effect there. He is going to do a lot to help slaves. He believes slaves should be Christianized, that they should be treated fairly, which were also things that ran against the custom of the time. He's going to be an interesting individual, to say the very least. And when he died in 1740, he's going to have a eulogy. And at the eulogy will be a great poetess from the early 1800s, Phyllis Wheatley. Phyllis Wheatley is going to read a poem, and the poem is called an uh, an elegant poem on the death of the celebrated divine and eminent servant of Jesus Christ and the Reverend and learned George Whitefield. Phyllis Wheatley was a freed slave. Here at his eulogy is a noted poetess who is going to be reading a poem in his honor, in honor of a man who was a slave owner. I think that might give you an idea of the weight that he carried as an individual. Now, before we go any farther, Dr. Slayton, I got to tell you, we have to leave. My wife and I are going to a Dodger game tonight, so I've got to get out of here. But don't turn off. Don't turn it off yet. I haven't forgotten you. Go Rangers.